Thank you all for coming today. We appreciate that. Just a quick word, we will be recording this. So let me move on without further ado. Our agenda, we're going to try and get through this within the 30 minutes. Please ask your questions through the chat function, and we will get back to them at the end of the session. So we're going to talk a little bit about where the OAGi technology has been in order to explain why moving to mobile and cloud is just a natural evolution, and how we believe we can help folks use their investment in OAGi on these new platforms moving forward, what it is that we're doing, and then other technologies we're looking at in this space. First off, I want to thank all OAGi members for making this webinar possible. You guys are the ones who pay the freight. So a little housekeeping. Looks like everybody's muted now, and the questions will be asked at the end. And so if you don't want to be on the recording, you won't offend us if you drop off. So going right into it, OAGi was originally founded in 1994, so we've been around a good while. Originally by ERP vendors, but now we have the end users as well as government entities as members of the organization. And there was a lot of, moving into the internet bubble, a lot of hype around what kind of standards to build, and the board took a decision not to build technology standards. We're going to leave that to the OASIS of the world, and we're going to focus on content. But our content scope has always been a little bit broader than just B2B. We identified 3 major areas we were going to attack from the start, and they included B2B and then enterprise integration, and also thirdly what we'll call application to execution systems, which is time data collection and manufacturing execution and other types of applications at that level. And so we call that everywhere to everywhere integration. Our first release of OAGi was February of 1996, and we only had 2 BODs, believe it or not, and we had developed our own metadata. The members had decided they didn't want to use the EDI structures, and this was pre-XML days, and so they developed their own metadata, which is very tight. We got some smart guys in from MIT, and Microsoft was involved, and Oracle, and IBM, and developed a very tight metadata. And we really, what we did was we gave detailed examples of how to deploy that metadata within the Word document itself, but it was still just a Word document. And today we're at release 9.6, which represents over 20 actually releases of the system in terms of evolution. We're at 586 messages, including 92 nouns, 13 verbs, and 68 scenarios. And this version of XSD supports the UN CFAC Core Component Technical Specification version 3.0, which is really a data modeling methodology, so that it applies very, very rigorous data modeling with XSD. And the goal of that is to reduce ambiguity in the messages and the data model itself. So a quick historical reference, we first shipped pre-XML, then we shipped the first generation of XML in '98, the current generation in 2002, and then we evolved it to support CCTS, an early version, and now this one. So this is just a natural evolution where we keep the data model intact and we evolve how it is expressed moving forward. And so from there, we go to the environment is changing. One might say that the environment has already changed, and it continues to evolve and accelerate into these opportunities, as it were. And so we took a decision last year to begin looking at how we can improve the OAGi technology to support these platforms that our members and end users are moving to, and how they can leverage their investment in OAGi on these new platforms. And first off, we started looking at, okay, where is OAGi itself useful in the cloud? And to that end, I show you this article by David Lithicum. He's a famous author, blogger. He's got a good blog on InfoWorld.com. And he warned that as we go into the cloud, it could be just like it was when we first started doing integration in the enterprise. We just do it in silos. We end up with spaghetti, and because that's really historically the way we go to new technologies and new platforms. And he's warning here of the need to be vigilant to recognize these very familiar yet unproductive patterns. And so we look at that and say, well, OAGi addresses e-commerce today as well as enterprise standards. It makes sense that people could leverage the OAGi data models as they move into the cloud and further beyond that into mobile as well. And there's a really smart guy by the name of Kevin Kelly who really emphasized this point when he introduced the concept way back in 2007 of an intercloud. You know, a lot of times when we go into a new thing, we don't think, well, one cloud's going to need to talk to another cloud, and that cloud's going to need to talk to our supplier, and so on. But the net of it is that this is where we are moving, and stuff within different clouds are talking to each other today, and we'll do more of that in the future, all the more reason to leverage data standards. So we started looking at changes in 2011 to support cloud computing. And the first place we looked was the messaging architecture itself. So we're still at the messaging level now. We're looking at the bot application area to see if we need to build out a manifest of from and to, if we need multiple hops of that. And we're still looking at that. We have not made that decision yet, and we're open to more input on that as people gain experience. There's a project at UNC-FACT that's looking at that as well, led by NEC, to look at what kind of changes do we need to messaging envelopes to support cloud. And so we continue to look into this issue. Moving forward, I went to a conference in February of this year. It was a hardcore manufacturing conference, but there's a session on mobile and a session on cloud. And in the mobile session, I had one business executive stand up and say, we're not providing BlackBerries to our members anymore. We have a BYOD, bring your own device syndrome, and we're developing ways to support that. At the same time, he also said that he lives in fear of his employees coming in and saying, I'm already doing this with my mobile device for this business. When are you going to be able to support me on it? And one of the conclusions one can draw is that the consumerization of IT is now leading the business instead of the business leading. Historically, as we know, it's been the business who leads the way to the consumer, but not this time. And so we're looking at all the possibilities they have, and they did some surveys, and I have copies of those presentations. If someone wants to write to me, I can send you a copy of that presentation, where a lot of people are using this just for BI right now. And if you go to, say, iTunes, most of the mobile apps you'll see are for BI. But the possibilities are much greater than that, and we'll talk a little bit more about those use cases moving forward. So I pulled this just recently. You can see it's July 19th of this year, and to reemphasize that mobile is here, and it has already surpassed the desktop in many cases. In China, it has surpassed the desktop in terms of people accessing the internet. So this is something that's accelerating, and most of us are all trying to run around and get out in front of this thing before it runs us down. It's moving on to the business side. Here's one piece of data from IDC. It says just next year, 35% of the workforce is going to be using mobile technology in their business. And Gartner is emphasizing that all organizations, IT organizations, need to embrace mobile and wireless technologies and learn how to leverage them for the business. So the OAGi working group has been looking at transactional use cases as well as traditional executive BI use cases, which includes sales reporting and the dashboard and management alerts, so you can do management by exception. We don't see a lot of that yet, but that possibility is really holds a lot of promise. And then on the transactional use cases, what if you could give an app to your business partner that they could check their inventory levels and know when they need to reorder, or vice versa, they can check the inventory to know when they need to ship again. We could also do this using push notifications to your suppliers, partners, and employees throughout an operation. And of course, the Salesforce folks, that's actually, some of that's taken place already. And a little bit of CRM, but not a lot where customers can maintain their own profiles via an app that you could give them. And that saves you resources, but it also ensures a higher level of data quality as well, and then so on. So there's a lot of possibilities. Today, most of these types of functions are done on mobile via specialty devices. You see the FedEx guy when he comes to your door, that's a specialty device. You go into a plant, they have specialty devices out on the shop floor to do things. That's not necessary anymore moving forward. We can hand an iPad or an Android pad to someone on the dock, and they can do their receiving and more using a commodity device. And we see other emerging use cases, GPS devices, for example. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen the advertisements for automobiles that are now Wi-Fi enabled. And so you're rolling Wi-Fi node. And a fascinating thing, and I had dinner with the president of this organization last night, Ag Gateway, is that they have a project going on called Precision Ag, where they're actually connecting farm implements like this directly back to their devices to track where the seeds were planted, what was on the seed, what kind of fertilizer there was. And frankly, they're actually going even farther now. They're building pilotless tractors. And they're the biggest companies, most are out, are remotely piloting these things, like the U.S. military pilots drones today, remotely, driving these giant tractors out in the field. And of course, the Google TV and Apple TV on the television set says mobile devices as well. So we announced our mobile business initiative in January of this year. We announced our cloud in the fall of 2011. So this has been an evolving process for the membership. We've looked at the cloud, that led us to mobile, and mobile is now leading us to new technologies like JavaScript object notation, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So this is really one vision for how Jason can interoperate in this environment. And a couple different points I want to make on this. One is that you'll see EDI and XML being used for B2B or other technologies, spreadsheets still in some cases. And XML technology primarily is being used, although not exclusively, for the enterprise. And then when we get to the mobile devices and the cloud APIs, today most of those are all JSON-based. And so imagine, if you will, we had somebody out on a receiving dock with an iPad, and delivery came in. They pulled up the app for that delivery. They checked how many were received. That communicated back to your ERP to update the ERP, but it also could possibly then communicate to a cloud service broker, and that cloud service broker could then have a capability to communicate to your supplier to tell them that the goods have been received and it's okay to invoice. One possible action scenario can be done on a commodity device with a simple application. We can't do those kinds of things today with all the specialty devices. So I also want you to see that these technologies are coexisting. We don't see JSON replacing XML, just like we never saw XML replacing EDI. What we see is JSON filling a void of a new platform and a new area that we're moving into. And one thing, after many years in this business, we know there's always another technology, and very rarely do they replace each other at this type of level. What they end up doing is complementing the technologies that are in place today. And so we recently announced the fact that we are adding REST processing to our JSON APIs as we design these APIs. And I'll talk a little bit more about what the working group is doing to design those now. And so we've announced that in September, as you can see, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what we're doing there as well and why. So this is a product management slide where it says, with the move to mobile and business, new classes of solutions are being built and deployed. And I had a revelation about a year or so ago. I was at lunch with my son who works for Google, and he's saying, Dad, all the APIs that Google does, the Facebook and LinkedIn, they're all JSON-based, because the #1 language being used in the cloud today in the mobile is JavaScript object notation, and you get, JavaScript, and you get JSON for free with that, because when you declare an array, you get JSON automatically. And so JSON's strength is the ability to transmit data on the wire. Its genesis is not like XSD. XSD's genesis is publishing to define data. And us data transfer folks grabbed it out of their hand and started using it for enterprise integration and for B2B, but that wasn't its original intent. In this case, it is the original intent of JSON to do that, but not to define the data structures. And I'll explain why that's important a little bit more in the next few slides. So what does it stand for? We've covered some of that. It's JavaScript object notation. This is just a definition for people so they can read it. You can look it up. Many of you probably already know what it is. It's actually an IETF RFC 4621, and it's not new. It has been around, I believe, since 2007 in this space, but it's just now moving to the enterprise with some of the stuff. So the cloud folks have been sort of separated from the hardcore enterprise folks for a while, as I'm sure many of you know, but now, but no longer. And so it makes sense to embrace this and to build solutions with our members to enable them to leverage their OAGi investment. And REST is just a type of processing. It's not a standard. It's just the way that people interact with the JSON APIs in the cloud and mobile. And you can see, you can read this as well as I, representational state transfer. It relies on a stateless environment. So basically, you do something and you don't expect a connection until that something is completed. Every transaction is what we call atomic. And it comes with, well, let me just roll forward on that one. So we're embracing JSON for OAGi instances on the wire, and we're going to begin shipping those instances once the working group designs their the way they wish to express the JSON. Because like XML, there are many ways to express the JSON, and we want to do it in a structured, disciplined manner. The working group is collaborating on a design guide for doing just that, to describe the JSON APIs and how to interact with them within the REST framework. Within the REST framework, we are planning to use the 4 common verbs for REST: get, put, delete, and post. And that begs the question, well, where's the baud verbs? We're not planning to use the baud architecture per se in this environment. We're planning to use the REST processing verbs and to leverage the data model. And we believe that the highest form of content we'll be using is the noun, but we could go down to as low a level as the element for the fine-grained APIs, most common in the cloud and in mobile. This is just a listing of the nouns for an example, but where we expect to be is down here, and because OAGi is built out at this level, the nouns come sorry, the bods come from nouns and verbs, and the nouns come from these components. This will enable people to do some of what they're doing today, which is for web services. Some folks are doing the building of these pieces for and web services, so they can deploy, like, check your inventory level thing to a business partner, and this just brings it to the cloud capability and mobile capability as well. So this is where we expect a lot of the work to take place, and the design guide is intended to cover that. So the BOD is going to remain for enterprise messaging, and the REST support is additional to our BOD architecture. The XSD remains the normative form of OAGis moving forward. JSON will be an expression from the model, and you'll hear more about the model terminology as we move into OAGis X, and we'll be announcing the first public review of OAGis Release 10 on Monday of next week. And so XSD remains the normative, and we are planning for the EDI, XSD, and JSON REST to coexist. So the working group is also looking at big data opportunities as well as NoSQL opportunities, but we are not doing anything with these technologies at this time. It's important, I think, we want to communicate to you that we continue to look forward in terms of ways that we can leverage the OAGis data model, which has 16, 17 years of maturity, moving forward into new platforms and technologies. So we have published a position paper on this, and you can download that position paper for free. It's on the front of our website. We are building the design guide, and that is the domain of the working group right now. And as I said, we're designing the JSON REST APIs and processing what the JSON BOD architecture, if you can call it that, will look like, and then deciding on our best form of JSON. And we're using our, following our developer community, our end users, and we're actually getting best practices documents from suppliers that our members are using. So as a product management, we're planning to publish these instances. We're using best practices. We're not planning to do JSON schema at this time. We're watching JSON schema. We understand there's some work taking place at IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force, on JSON schema, but it's controversial right now amongst the JSON community as to whether that would betray the original meaning of how JSON should be used. So we're going to continue to watch that, build our case studies. And so if you're a member and you haven't joined the working group, we invite you to. And non-members, we invite you to join OAGi and join this working group, or our other working groups, Context and OAGis X, and moving forward, an OAGis certification program for engineers. And one more thing, we're planning to launch a new membership, 2 new membership categories, hopefully this month. That includes an individual member, and then what we call an individual associate member, which is someone who works for a big company, but they want to join on themselves, and their organization doesn't want to pay the larger organizational fee. So we're trying to do everything we can to continue to open up this community to get smart people to work on this stuff. So this is reiterating where we are and where we see this going. Some of this is actually, you know, not to be a little too way out there, but some of this is a bit of a journey and a discovery, because as we learn things, we're going to continue to migrate this forward and evolve forward. So with that in mind, we got you out in right about 25 minutes. Do we have any questions? Dan, did you hear? I didn't see your question before. Can you hear now? Okay, if nobody has any questions, then we'll go ahead and end this call. And we thank everybody for attending and wish you a good rest of your day.